consumers, to the Life Happens, Laugh Anyway podcast. I'm comedian Tracy DeGraff.
And I'm Cathrine, co-host and bestie.
Cathrine, we have got a hot topic today.
It is real hot.
Ooh, it's hot here.
It's hot and it's bothersome.
It is.
Hot and bothered.
Yeah. Anyway, it's episode number 130. 130 episodes.
That's right.
Can you believe we've been that consistent? I can't.
I am giving myself a pat on the back because, yeah.
Me too.
It is kind of hard to believe.
It is. So good for us. And we have sponsors. Tell our listeners about our sponsors and how they can become one too.
Our sponsors help us to keep going.
Yes, they do. Thank you, sponsors.
Yeah, they do. They contribute $5 a month, or a couple or a few of them do 1 month sum. Mm-hmm. And that kind of just helps us move forward with costs. It costs to put this podcast out on a platform. And we also want to save up for better equipment.
Yes.
And because you maybe listeners can't tell, but or maybe they can. We just have a lot of things that we kind of have to compensate for that, aren't working the way they should and things like that.
Yeah,
so,
it's just us. We don't have an intern.
No.
There's nobody else in this house helping us.
We don't have no Jeeves.
No.
Yeah.
And we want to go to Podfest. So help us.
Yeah. I was going to say that.
Help
and I
us.
thought, well, I don't know for sure.
Oh, we should go.
Okay.
There's a podcasting conference that happens every year in January in Florida. I can't think of a better place to be in January than Florida. And it happens to be in Orlando, where Catherine's daughter lives there, and my in-laws live only an hour from there.
Yeah.
So we're going. But
okay.
What we need to plan for that. And so your support will help us to pay for
the workshops and so forth, because it is a learning thing.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
thank you for all of those who have crossed over from humor consumer to humor contributor.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you.
If you haven't crossed over,
that's time
it's
to.
Very easy to do it.
It is. If you just go to the show notes of this episode, or if you just go to patreon.com and look for Life Happens, Laugh Anyway podcast, you'll see where you can sign up for $5 a month. I just want to give a little shout out to our current sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have Katie, Colleen, Ursula, Nancy, Kenny, Karen, Janine, Muffin, Darlene, Courtney, Joan, and then we do have, those are all the ones that are contributing to us at $5 a month, which, by the way, once you get it set up, it's just an automatic thing.
Very easy.
You don't even know that the $5 has left your account. But and we haven't spent any of the money yet, because right now we have, let's see, how much do we have in this account? I'm just checking. Oh, we have $245.
Ooh.
Yes. But we've also received paper checks from
paper checks.
Yeah, the old-fashioned kind, from 3 people who just didn't want to do the Patreon thing. So Linda, Carla, and Gail. Yeah, those 3 have contributed. So thank you to all of you.
Much.
So we're trucking along.
We are.
Yeah,
Look at us.
I know. So this is very exciting for us to be able to bring this content to you. And what we have today, just tell our friends what our topic is today, Cathrine.
We are talking about, well, first of all, the documentary that we watch, that we're basing this off of, is called Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey.
Yes.
It's the story of this certain sect of Mormonism, but it's there's many different branches. This is the FLDS.
Yeah.
Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints.
Right.
And it's the story of these 2 nut jobs. One was the father, the other was his son, but there were many sons. Rulon Jeffs and Warren Jeffs.
I like to call him Warden Jeffs.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, because he imprisons women to be his slaves. Rulon and Warren Jeffs. Some of you will recall the name Warren Jeffs for sure, because he's now serving a life sentence in prison in Texas as a result of his crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
So this is what we're talking about. And we decided, after looking over the content that we have brought forward for the last 130 episodes, that our audience likes to hear documentary stuff. We like it. And so we decided once a month that we're going to try to cover like a true crime documentary.
Right.
And that's how we ended up here with Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey.
Right.
Oh, and we're going to get to that keep sweet thing.
Yeah, we are for sure.
Hold. All right. So we've got 3 takeaways for you. If you hang in there with us for the next 45 minutes or so, whatever it takes us to get through it all, here's what you're going to get out of it. You're going to learn who are the Jeffs. Who are these nutbags?
Yeah.
Right? You're going to just get a picture from our perspective of who they are. You're going to get a review of Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey.
Yeah.
And you may want to binge it yourself. We binged it yesterday, all 4 episodes. Boom, 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 boom.
I can't believe we did that.
I know, but it wasn't hard to do because they would leave you with this, what?
Yes, that's right.
And then you got to know what happened next.
It's just, and the reason is, even though it's so disturbing, it's like we can't wrap our brains around it.
Right.
So that's what, it's the intrigue, like, how does this happen? And sometimes I think, why does this happen? Why doesn't God stop it?
It's sick.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, number 1, who are the Jeffs? Number 2, the review of the film, Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. And then finally, we're going to leave you with the dangers of cults. This is a cult.
Oh, yeah.
And we are going to just kind of talk about the dangers of cults and how to stay away from them. And of course, we will land with some scripture from the Holy Bible to point us to the truth. And stay tuned, because at the very end, we're also going to talk about 3 things to look for in a good church.
Yeah.
You know, I really
real
think that's going to be good. All right, so let's roll it out. Who are these nutbags? Rulon and Warren.
Okay. Rulon, when this story opens, he's already an old man. Okay.
And wrinkly. He's bald and wrinkly. And
yes. And he has a total at some point of 65 wives.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. And as we said, he's the leader, the prophet is what they call him, of the FLDS. Jeez.
Okay. And the F stands for,
Uh-oh.
It should stand for the word that we all think of when we say the F word. But in this case, it does stand for fundamentalist.
Yes.
The fundamentalist Latter-day Saints.
Right.
So there was the Mormon community, or I don't even know if they call themselves a church, but there was the Mormon organization, let's call it that. And then this group, they came out with, well, we want to be fundamentalist Mormons. So we don't want to change with the times. We want to stay with the old days.
Right. It was kind of an undercover thing for polygamy.
Yes.
And because some leaders before Rulon were like, publicly, no, we don't do that. But really they were doing it.
Right.
Okay. And so this is the story of how not only did it continue, but it just got so bad and so wicked is really what this story is about.
Yeah, and Rulon, the father, he was bad, but Warren was worse. The son was way worse. Things got really dark.
Yes.
Under Warren.
Yes. I was just thinking when you said that, like to God, evil's evil, and it's all wicked. In human standards, yes, Warren was way more wicked. And
well, let's talk about that for a second, because the exchange of power, let's talk about when the baton was passed down to Warren. Obviously, Rulon, he was mid-80s when the story opens for us, when we started watching the film, Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. He's kind of on his deathbed in a way, like he's got he looks like he can barely hold his own head up.
The man is on oxygen.
Yes.
And he's got the tube up the nose and down the however many feet the tube was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was obsessed with young girls. He was a legit pedophile. He was marrying young girls.
Yes.
Teenagers and younger.
And so they interview a gal named Rebecca, and they also interview they interview many women, but these 2 were married to him, Alicia. And Rebecca was about 18 or 19 when she was given to Rulon to be married.
Yeah.
And when we say given, it's her father. He receives honor when a daughter of his is going to marry the prophet, because the prophet is like God to them.
Yeah. So this dad, what was the dad's name was Lloyd?
Lloyd.
Okay. So Lloyd
Wall.
Lloyd, he was an educated man. He had a couple of degrees. He was super smart.
He had many degrees, I found out.
Yes.
He was an engineer. He was a chemist. He was, oh my goodness.
I think he was a geologist too.
Yes, he was.
He came up with different inventions and patents and so forth.
And the thing different about him was he converted to the FLDS.
Not born into it.
Not born into it, but had converted because he was looking for like a fundamentalist type way of living.
Okay.
And religion.
Okay, so here's Lloyd. He's no dummy. And he's got 2 wives at the time that he gives his daughter over to the old man, over to Rulon to become a wife. The bottom line motivation of him giving that girl to that old man is for Lloyd to get a 3rd wife.
Right, because the more in this religion, the more wives you have, the higher position you have in heaven then.
Yeah.
In eternity.
And if you don't have 3, you don't get that.
That's right. And he also receives more honor from the prophet, which is this Rulon. And it's a sick and twisted way of living.
It is.
I mean, the belief system is like, you wonder, how does somebody that smart
fall for it?
Fall for that?
Well, I don't know.
I think that part of it is he wants to believe that.
Absolutely, he wants to believe it.
And he wants to live that way.
He does want to live that way.
And by the way, too, they have with the first wife, now she converted as well, because they were not FLDS people. They were something in the Mormon religion. And so she converted as well. And that meant she was going to embrace polygamy. And she did say that it was, it was a little odd, but she was the first wife, and those children that they had were the upstairs children and family, and they lived in the upstairs. The second wife, and all those children, they lived in the downstairs. And one of the key people that we have been listening to and was interviewed in this Keep Sweet thing her name was Elisa Wall.
Right.
And she was a downstairs daughter.
Right.
Okay. And yeah, then there was the 3rd wife later.
Okay. Right. So yesterday when Ron got home from work, I started telling him, all about this. Mm-hmm. And I told him about Lloyd and how Lloyd had 2 wives, and that if he didn't get a 3rd wife, he couldn't go to heaven. Yeah. And Ron says, so you mean he had to go through hell to get to heaven?
Actually,
I was like, yeah, exactly. Right. Wouldn't you want 3 Tracys?
Yes. All the while, by the way, that reminds me. So the women were not to give any kind of hell. They were to keep sweet.
Yes.
And that was the mantra that Rulon had come up with. I don't think the fathers or the prophets before him had that motto. And so that was a way of submission. That was the way women were supposed to be presented and act at all times. Yeah. Keep sweet. So that was a certain way that their hair, their demeanor, their voice, everything.
Yeah, it was a control. It was totally a control mechanism over their emotions.
Yeah. In fact, this Elisa had said in this separate interview that women in this religion were not low on the totem pole or bottom of the totem pole. They weren't even on the totem pole.
Right.
They were beneath it.
Yeah.
That's how low regard women were.
They were property, as evidenced by the fact that Lloyd, this guy, getting back to how we kind of went down this rabbit trail, but Lloyd gave his daughter to Rulon, this 85-year-old man, to be his wife so that Lloyd could get a 3rd wife.
Yes.
That's exactly why he did it.
Yes.
The women were not considered human. They were not considered, like she said, even on the totem pole. They were just like pawns to be traded.
Yes.
It was disgusting.
Yeah. And when you hear this Rebecca describe it, And she's like, that, so also too, they had no idea how babies were made. They had no idea anything at all about intimacy and sex. And in fact, they were taught that it's bad. And so now Rulon is telling her, to spread her legs and to do that. And she's like, what? And so she's in shock. Now, this other woman named Alicia, she's about 17 when she's given to Rulon as well. And
Alicia?
Yeah.
The blonde?
No, that's Elisa.
Oh,
this is Alicia.
Oh. Okay.
She's the one with the dark brown eyes and the short brown choppy-ish hair.
Right. I got you now.
Okay. And when it's not funny, but we're going to have to find the humor in something.
You do have to find the humor.
Well, even she cracks a smile like, yeah, it was gross. When she is given to him in marriage in her first night, she says that he falls asleep afterwards. And she too had no idea what happens in a marriage in terms of in the bedroom and whatever. And he falls asleep. Well, because he's 80 something. And he wakes up and nudges her with his elbow, and he needs help to the bathroom. Well, he doesn't make it. So he doesn't make it to the bathroom, which means he has an accident on the floor, which she has to clean up. And she even says that at some point, one of the times, she accidentally stepped on his oxygen cord. And that's where she kind of laughed. Like, it's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. Wait, go ahead.
I was going to say, and she ends up, so also the prophet is not supposed to die.
Right.
They're taught that he will never die and that he will live on forever. But then when he actually does die, he has a couple strokes, but he still lives. And while he's having these strokes, his son Warren is being not only groomed to be special out of all the children. There's so many children and so many branches. We can't describe it.
Yeah.
But anyway, Warren is taking control. And he learns at a very early age how to manipulate people. And he learns at a very age what people desire, like how he can manipulate people. And so he becomes principal at their special school. Mm-hmm. And he you could see how he is learning to be the next evil one, and even more evil, as we said.
Absolutely. He was not only born into it, but he was marinated in all of that belief system, that hierarchy of first of all, they thought their whole group was super special. Like they're the only ones that have the truth
and righteous.
Yeah. And the rest of the people are either apostates, they called them. Like if they left and they were like, this is garbage, this is ridiculous, we're out. Mm-hmm. Those people were apostates. Or what did they call the people like us?
Well,
like,
Gentiles.
Okay. But they meant that we were like evil of the world.
Well, they were taught that, that people outside of their clan were evil, and mean, and all those things. But what I was getting at was, so Rulon does eventually die because he's a human.
Somebody was stepping on his oxygen cord for too long.
Yeah. So the people are confused.
Right.
They really believed. And this is not a small organization. This is thousands of people. And they really believed that he was going to live on. And so Warren then takes on, he's got to come up with an excuse as to how his father passes away. Well, then he can't come out and say it, but he gets people to believe he's morphed into his father, the prophet, and now there's reincarnation involved. Right. And so what I was getting at with Alicia is she ends up then having to marry then one of the other sons. I think his name was Leroy or something.
Yeah, she fell in love with him.
Now, she loved him.
She did.
I don't know how she could out of all the families, they had the most united family, and she was very happy.
Yeah.
Well, then he gets, later on down the line, Warren strips her that family away,
right,
and makes her marry
Seth. Yeah. It's so
just
nutty.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't even know why I went on that, but her story's interesting to me.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
And she's a real person.
Yeah.
And she really went through this horrible thing.
Yeah.
And she was really brainwashed into it and raised into it. So the bottom line is, getting to the passing of the baton from Rulon to Warren, is that obviously people die, and Rulon died. And Warren just assumed all of the authority.
Yeah, he didn't really get past the baton. It was more he took over.
It. Yeah. He took it.
And so-called morphed into the prophet.
And he had, before his dad actually died, and he was still alive, but he was in whatever condition he was in as a result of his stroke, Warren would say things like, "I'm here speaking for my father. I'm here because my father sent me with this message." And that morphed into, "I am my father." And these people don't just think that they're the leader of this cult. They believe they're equal to God, as if they are God.
Literally the prophet.
Yeah.
Assigned prophet by God.
But putting them not, like God was not lower than them, like they were equal to God. They were, it was as if God.
I can't even comprehend that.
So this Warren, he not only had the control of their minds and the control of their spiritual life, but he also had control of all the money. So all of the houses and stuff that people lived in, they were owned by the quote unquote church, or as we like to say, cult. Men who ran successful businesses. They signed their business over to the cult.
Yes.
So if you have an organization that dictates to you how you live, what you eat, how you dress. And that's what Warren started to do. When all of this group was under Rulon, he told the women, wear what you want, but be modest. Don't wear clothing that would be revealing, that kind of a thing. And so they did wear the prairie dresses and stuff, but they could choose the color,
the patterns.
They also wore denim.
Yes.
And then that was deemed evil.
Right. Warren then said, okay, and then the hair had to be even more immaculate. And that, I'm sure you've seen pictures or video on the news of their big wave hair.
Yeah.
And then the certain braids they had to have. And yes, no more denim, and especially no more red, no patterns. And so just these solid, what did the one guy say? Laura Ingalls. But it wasn't even Laura Ingalls that had pattern and lace and things like that. This was...
It was, again,
wackadoo.
It was another level of control. And Rulon, like I said, was bad. Warren was worse. He took away all the children's toys during this period of time.
He took away the toys? I did not know that. No more toys. I did not know that.
Yeah. He took away the toys, Catherine.
Oh, there will be no Christmas.
Took away the toys.
Oh no.
Yeah, and he dictated what they could eat. He was...
He did?
Yeah, he was a... Wait till you hear what he did from prison.
Oh my gosh.
This guy is a 100% sociopath, nut job, narcissist. You put all the labels on him. He's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Wait till we get to the end too. Oof. What they find in the vault and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay, so anyway, Warren, what was I going after with this change? The people were starting to see, okay, some people. Right. The people that were interviewed on this documentary, they said that things got really dark once Warren took over.
Yes, and one of the brothers was interviewed as well. He had, I think, a different mother. Because there were 60...
They all had different mothers.
Yeah, there were 65 wives to Rulon. So now imagine, and then they have no birth control. So there's, I don't know how many kids. Anyway, now this other brother, Wallace, okay, he says, he actually told his father, Rulon, years ago, Warren is getting way too cozy with the girls.
Right.
And the dad blew him off, basically. And so he saw this coming. And what drew the line for Wallace was when when Warren now was in control. The dad is dead. Rulon's dead. And what's his name? Warren is marrying young people and kissing them. And Wallace knows this is not part of, what we believe.
Yeah. Like young girls, like what age? Like 12-ish, like young.
Mm-hmm. And he was marrying, not only himself marrying young women, but he was marrying off young girls to young men or old men or whatever. So that was, that became, like you said, the eye-opener for some of the followers, but not all of them.
It's a cult that is really steeped in belief, and they really do believe it. They're buying it hook, line, and sinker.
And let's talk about that. Like, why? Well, one interesting thing that I took from this whole interview and this thing was that fear drove the compliance.
Absolutely,
they obeyed and were compliant because of fear. What was the fear? Well, they also taught that destruction and the whole earth was going to go on fire except for their little, well, not little, but big community.
Right.
Exactly. And so the destruction and the fiery damnation that was coming was going to be any day.
Right.
And so that was the fear.
They live that way all the time.
Yes.
In that space of urgency, like we wake up in the morning, it could be today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And the belief was that the whole earth was going to burn up by fire. Mm-hmm. So you didn't want to get burned up. And their little community was going to be risen up. So somehow it was going to be raised up from the earth and prevented from being on fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Real quick, before we go on, I'm looking at the photograph of Rulon Jeffs.
Oh, no.
In his coffin.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, let's talk about that, too.
Oh, this guy.
So he's in white. The inside of the coffin is all white, and all 65 wives were told to sew together quickly, all the best seamstresses, white dresses. So they handmade 65 white dresses, and they're all surrounding the coffin.
It's just bizarre to look at this picture and see all these women with their smiles and their hair all coughed up, like you said. It was just unbelievable.
It is.
So if you're not going to take the time to watch the documentary, at least look at that picture. And then look at this. Here's Rulon and Warren.
Oh, I just want to gag.
I mean, I don't think that they could get a woman to have sex with them if it weren't for their cult. Seriously. I don't think they could.
I agree. I don't know.
All right. Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got Rulon is dead and his ways are gone.
Yeah.
And Warren has taken over.
Yeah. I also want to talk about, I just looked at my notes real quick.
Yeah.
Warren, the other thing that he did, they used to have in their little library, they used to have kind of like secular books, like Nancy Drew books.
Yeah.
And they had science books. Well, when Warren took over, and whether this, I don't know if this was before his father Rulon died or not, but he was principal. So pages from the science books were cut out, just completely cut out. Books like Nancy Drew, gone. Anything that would be outside influence, those things were taken away. And you hear that Rebecca, the one that I was talking about earlier, she's one of the Wall daughters. Mm-hmm. How disappointed she was and how she sensed how wrong this was as well.
Imagine the amount of paranoia going through Warren Jeffs.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Right.
For him to go to those lengths of not allowing people to think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the amount of paranoia. And they controlled all the education of the children.
Yeah.
And so, those lost boys that they talked about.
Yeah, the ones that were kicked out, 13 and over.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even know how to go down this rabbit hole. Let's just try real quickly to go down and come back up. Obviously, if you have an organization that preys upon young girls and giving them to old men,
Right.
you have a surplus of young boys.
Right. Who have hormones.
Well, and they don't have any wives to be had because they keep together. They try to keep their community isolated. So they don't want you going off and marrying the apostates or the Gentiles. They want you marrying within.
Right.
But they're taking all the girls for themselves. How many are these old dudes that are there?
Ugh.
So what they did was they rounded up all these boys from age 13 and up, and they just got rid of them.
And they didn't want them fraternizing with the girls in any way whatsoever. So, but the other boys, they used as free labor. Because, by the way, this church was multi-million-dollar church, if you want to call it that. I hate to even say church because...
Cult. Call it what it is.
It is
a cult.
It is a cult. It is.
Yeah, they used the boys for free labor for like construction and concrete crews and stuff like that. And it was said that in the Utah area that contractors who were legit like contractors, they hated when the FLDS would come in with a company because they always underbid them.
Yes, that's right.
Because they had free slave labor.
And these boys worked so hard and so long, they didn't have time to think about girls or anything else. And that was the purpose of working them so hard. In fact, one of the mantras was work hard to earn the honor of working harder. Yeah. And what was that quote too that Warren used about the hair? Remember?
It was about control.
It was, yeah.
And what it was in a nutshell was they wanted to be able to control everybody within the tension of what it would take for one hair to be stretched out.
Yeah.
So meaning absolutely no tension at all.
Right.
Any tension is not allowed. So you can't disagree with, oh, well, I'm telling you that you have to wear now long underwear from your...
Oh, that's right. They had to wear long
neck
underwear.
To your wrist to your ankles.
That's right.
And then over the long underwear, you got to put your plain Jane, like prairie dress.
Yes.
And then over that, you got to put on your little smile, but you just got to have a little grin. It can't show teeth. You just got to have a little grin. And then on top of that, you got to do your hair. And they had like approved hairdos.
Yes.
They had certain ones, and then they showed you how to do it.
Yeah. By the way, too, I just want to mention this, too, because I wrote it to the side, and I thought it was another explanation of why intelligent people followed this. It was also because to lose the favor of the prophet was just absolutely unimaginable because it was linked to their eternal life. And I think we mentioned it earlier, but it was just
fear.
It was a truth to them.
Not only their eternal life, but they were shunned in such a way that they were excommunicated. They lost everything. They lost all their money. They lost their business. They lost their families, their multiple wives, all of their children. They lost everything.
Yeah, some of these people that were interviewed, as Elisa, she has no idea where her mother is. And by the way, this Elisa was 14 years old, and it was said to her that she was going to have to marry her cousin Alan. And she didn't like him anyway. She sensed something about him that was just evil and wrong. And he did abuse her.
He was a bully, she said.
He did abuse her when she begged her mother to not make her marry him. She does forgive her mother later because her mother's beliefs were so steeped in this and that. And she understands how manipulation and control were, how it worked. But she was 14 years old. 14. She's a baby.
Like ninth grade.
Yes.
She actually got a meeting with Rulon to ask him.
A few times.
Yeah. Well, she met with him to ask him, could we just wait until I'm 16 to marry? Because I'm just not ready right now. And he said, follow your heart. And when he said, follow your heart, she was elated. First of all, you have to understand that getting a meeting with the prophet for a girl, it's like unheard of.
Yeah. And they're supposed to look down and not look directly at them, all that stuff. Yeah.
And then for him to say, follow your heart, she felt like that was the answer to her prayers. She had been praying and fasting and asking God to allow her to not have to marry at the age of 14, but could she just wait 2 more years until she's 16 and then do it? Okay, so she leaves this big castle or wherever she went to meet with him. And Warren, who is, in the process of that takeover, she tells him, this is what Rulon said, was follow your heart. And so my heart is telling me I'm not ready to be married, and I will be ready when I'm 16. So just give me 2 years. And Warren said, you're ready, and you need to change your heart. Your heart thinks that you're not ready.
Yeah.
You need to go and change your heart and submit. And they married her off like the next day.
Yeah.
And it was horrible.
And she wondered, her and this other girl, Ruby, who also, she fell in love with a young boy, like normal,
right?
But they were not to be married. And she also was being given to be married to somebody. I don't even know who, but it doesn't matter. I mean, to her it does.
Right.
But they're in some vehicle. I think that, are the windows blocked off?
Yes.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
And they have no idea where they're going. Well, they figure out later that it was in Nevada because marriage
the laws
were different. It was more favorable for men to marry young and all this stuff. By the way, there's another woman that's interviewed, and she was married to one of the Jeffs as well. And she was suspicious. She was like, where are they going? Because, by the way, they're starting to build this Zion for the special elite to go to. So this is another backstory, I guess you could call it. And she's trying to figure out where are they going. So she looks at the mileage, the odometer in the vehicle, and then she gets out a map and she's like, okay, it's got to be somewhere in this radius. And then she notices the color of soil or mud on the vehicle, and she pretty much gathers, okay, they're going to wherever it was. I don't even know now. There were so many cities that were mentioned. El Dorado, which I always thought was El Dorado. But they had been moved down to Short Creek from Salt Lake City, by the way, because the Olympics were coming in 2002. And, also as we're watching this and we're seeing the timeline and so forth, I'm thinking, how does this happen in the United States of America in the 21st century? How does this happen? And it's so hard to, I could see how it happens. I know how it happened. But at the same time, it's such a tragedy that this kind of human trafficking is still happening in this country, in this century, is unimaginable.
Yeah. It is a sad story of law enforcement, because when they moved out of Salt Lake City, I mean, polygamy is illegal. It's illegal but it's rarely prosecuted because it's difficult to prove. And then even if you prove it, it creates a bit of a crisis now for all these kids. What are you going to do with them?
You're ripping families apart.
And these women, and nobody's educated. Like they're educated in their own system, but they don't teach them like how to read and write. The one boy who was interviewed, not in the documentary that we watched, but a different one that I watched, he was one of those that was like lost and
kicked out,
let go. Yeah, he could only read like a first grader, and he was a grown man. So he had to have tutoring so that he could have the skill of reading. And he was one of those that was like in a work camp forever.
Well, how then did the other... I wonder if it depends on what decade they grew up in, because when Rulon was in charge, they did have education, and they did know how to read and write. So,
well, this guy was with Warren when Warren was in charge. And I really think that Warren... I'm not going to say that Rulon was righteous at all in terms of what he did.
No, I'm not either.
However, he at least let them have some fun. He allowed them to like have picnics and to have joy. And Warren was just, he took the toys. What are you going to do?
Right.
Okay, I think we've pretty much described who these guys are and what they're about. They're sick. They've got problems. And they're controlling. Okay, so now Rulon's dead. Warren's in charge. This documentary, we've talked a lot about it already. It's a 4-episode documentary that you can watch. You can binge it like we did. We just binged it one after another. Yeah. Or you could do it like over a period of a couple days or whatever. And it does give you some insight into this world of what it might be like to be... What if you were born into that world, Catherine? You don't have any choice.
Well, that's one thing that I was not able to wrap my brain around, is how some people have, everybody's touched by evil. Everybody is touched by hardship and so forth. But the fact that some of us are more privileged than others is so hard to understand. I say privileged, I mean, had safe and secure families for the most part. I mean, yeah. I definitely have had my brush with some evil, you know, and I'm not, it's just that, it's just so sad. It's so sad to think about other human beings who have been abused in such ways and who have been brainwashed like that. And I just can't understand it.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because these kids that were born into this situation are just innocent little babies.
Yes.
That are born into the world.
Yeah.
They're into this human world, and then they're raised by brainwashed mothers and
fathers.
Yeah.
The fathers are, in many ways, they're victims too. As a woman, it's hard to say that, but they were brainwashed too.
They were. You know, Lloyd, I just heard Rebecca. Rebecca said that her dad, Lloyd, somebody asked her in an interview, do you have anything to do with him now? You know, and this was not in the documentary. This was a like a substitute interview or whatever. And she said no, by choice. She could be in touch with him, but she chooses not to, because even though he experienced what he experienced in that cult, he still gravitates toward the belief of it. So he does not live in a polygamous lifestyle right now. He's still with Myrna, his first wife.
Well, and his wives were taken away from him. So he almost had no choice, right? I mean, he may be monogamous now, but that's because Warren took those wives away from him.
That is correct. But he still subscribes to the belief system, and she just can't be in his life.
Yeah.
You know, she said that she can respect what he believes, but she cannot be a part of it. She cannot have him in her life as a dad, because he still believes that way of life, the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints way, is A-okay.
I don't think I could either.
Yeah, and obviously she has to find her way to move on and carve out some sort of existence for herself. I mean, that's all of us, right? We just all have to do that.
Yeah.
Hi. Anything else about the documentary itself?
Yeah, I wanted to say too, the extreme measures that Warren took. Like, he had cameras. He had so much control, and he had cameras put everywhere, so he can make sure they're saying amen after the prayer. By the way, he controlled the prayers too, told them what to pray for. And I want to say this because prayer is so sacred, and it's our communication with our Father in heaven, our Jesus. That's our communication. And for somebody to use prayer in their mantra, because by the way, his brick building, his home that he lived in, he had the words down the side of the building say, keep sweet, pray, and obey. And to use that, something so sacred in that kind of a way is just so sickening and disturbing. Just bothers me a lot. I don't even know where I'm going with this now, but it's so disturbing.
Total control.
Yeah.
It's just absolute total control. And there's no room for any of your own creativity. There's no room for your own thoughts.
Yeah.
There's no room for your own opinion or desires or flavors or preferences or anything.
Yeah.
It's just my way or the highway.
Right.
That's it.
All right.
All right. Is that a wrap for that part? Do we want
to talk about where they finally get the vault of all the information? So let's just say that. So they need to capture Warren. So they do get him on the fact that he knew marriages and rape was going on, but they couldn't get him on enacting on it himself. But finally, and it's a long story, but they finally, this big temple was built, and they find out that there's files. Not only files of the marriages and how old they were and blah, 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 but also he kept journals and he kept audio of what he was doing. And they walk into this big white room in the temple, and the one gal they're interviewing says, I could just feel, because she was out of the FLDS by then. Mm-hmm. And she's like, something is really wrong. Well, you find out that this vault, first of all, the vault downstairs had everything, all the stuff that I just said. And they were able to finally nail him for what he really did. And there was so back upstairs in this white room, and there's a bed. And that's all in white too. And I don't even know how to say it, but he was having girls on this bed and people watching while he did that. Also, he had been going around. Everybody was taught what evil was on the outside world. He had been going to sports games, strip clubs, Walt Disney World, all the stuff. And his excuse was that, it's so that I could tell God how evil the world is out there. That's what he was telling his followers.
Yeah,
as if God doesn't know.
Well, he put himself in the same position as God. He made himself a God.
Yeah.
Yeah, the amount of evil that was involved in what's behind all of this is hard to comprehend.
It is hard to comprehend.
Especially how it is all just sort of brought upon children, innocent children.
Yes.
And he could... Okay, so then one would think, I was going to say he could rot in where, like in prison, but in whatever.
Hell?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, we could say that.
It's
a place.
Yeah, it is a place.
It is.
I know, but for some reason when you say rot in hell, it just seems like it's so like serious. Like I don't use that term in that way. Like, rot in hell. I hope. Yeah. Like I wouldn't say I hope you rot in hell.
No, I wouldn't say it either, but
that's why I was hesitant to say it, but then you said it. So then I was like, okay, now it's
I
out.
thought you were struggling with naming hell.
Anyway.
Okay.
Anyway.
Thought I'd help you out.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate that. Now I forgot what I was going to say about it. Hold on. So it's hard to imagine that somebody could be that evil, right?
Yeah.
And do those things to those innocent girls and bring them up in that way. And then you would think, well, now we've got him. He's going to go to jail, and that's going to be the end of that. Mm-hmm. This is all going to be over. Guess what? No. It only emboldens some people to say now our prophet is being martyred because he's being sent off to jail.
Right. Martyred is the key word there. Yeah. Yeah.
And they just hang on his every word. Yeah. They go to jail and visit him, and they sit across with the glass and they go, how are you, master, prophet, father, whatever they call him? And then he gives edicts from jail. And he says, okay, this is what God is telling me that you have to do. And he's still bossing them around with what you can eat, what you can drink, what you can wear, what you can do. And guess what he tells them? No one can have sex. No sex.
Oh.
No sex. If I'm not having sex, nobody's having sex.
That's what he says.
He didn't say that, but that's what he did. He said there should be no touching of men and women, even if you're married. There should be no sex. There should be no intercourse, nothing.
Okay, he's not dumb. He's gonna know human nature, and that's gonna happen.
I don't know. I don't.
Wow.
And he just not that long ago. Here we are in 2023. And I can't remember because I've been all over the internet with these different things. Mm-hmm. But I think it was last year that he came out with this thing of all of the FLDS should come home, you'll be reunited with your original wives, and we're going to organize everybody in a different way and blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is this nut job is controlling this organization from prison.
It just seems so wrong that he's even able to.
Yeah.
That they don't cut him off completely because he's still committing the crime. He's in jail for the crime that he committed, but he's still committing the crime from jail.
No, it's probably some freedom of speech thing that he's got to have or something. I don't know. But you know, like you cut off the head of the snake, but then the snake grows two heads or whatever that saying is.
Right.
And where does it stop? Like he's got 85 kids or how many ever he made, you know. One of his sons, you think that one of his sons didn't think, well, hey, since he's in jail, I'm going to take on the role of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, wouldn't I like to be a prophet, a leader, a manipulator, all the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, in true form of a narcissist, he at some point says to, after he's arrested and in jail, he says to one of his brothers, I'm not the prophet. I have no power and this and that. And the brother says, yes, you are. Yes, you are. God's just testing you. And they believe, the authorities believe that was just Warren's way of being a narcissist and getting his brother and others to say, yes, you are.
Yeah.
You are the prophet. And I don't know what made me think of this too. By the way, we keep saying FLDS, but they called themselves the Work for years and years. It wasn't until way, way later and almost recent to them that it was fundamentalist or FLDS.
Right.
You know, I was just thinking too, I looked up before our podcast. I'm like, wasn't that other nutbag Lori Daybrook Vallow, whatever her name was?
Was she from there? she's
from one of those. She is from Latter-day Saints. I don't think it was the FLDS, but it is one of those. I can't. I know so this Elisa in a separate interview, she says, you know, if you come across them, treat them kindly because they believe what they believe, and they're just human beings trying to put one foot in front of the other and this and that. But I can't help but categorize them all as, well, I guess the leaders especially as nutbags. But that Lori Vallow, who, okay, so if you don't know, it was all over the news recently. She was married 5 times, but she started following this one man who became her husband, who was in one of the LDSs, and he had wackadoo beliefs too, that damnation was coming and only certain people were going to go to heaven, and that the evil people had to be killed off. Anyway, she was this model mother who even had a son that they had adopted. She did this with another husband that she had, and she killed her own children. And there were other murders involved too. The husband that she ends up with in the end, the one that she followed, he had been married for like 20 or 30 years, something like that, and had children, and she ends up dead. Anyway, she was one of those.
Well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
I have found this to be fascinating. I know that we've only been talking about it for a short period of time versus what we could say about it.
I know.
Even the 4-hour episodes of, or whatever the time frame was of this Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey,
couldn't
even
cover
that
it
was
all.
just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes, there is so much more. Each person that they interviewed in this Netflix special has more to their story.
They do.
But you just can't cover it all.
Right.
So
there's books out there. There's other docs that you can watch.
Yeah, I kind of want to read Elisa Walls. Yeah.
You read her book.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share the scripture because we need some encouragement.
Yeah. But we didn't really talk about the danger of cults.
Okay, we're going to get to that in just a second. I just feel like we have to share the scripture.
Let's go then, yeah.
Okay, so it's the book of Romans, chapter 16, verses 17 and 18. It says, I urge you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who cause divisions and put obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teaching you have learned. Mm-hmm. Keep away from them. For such people are not serving our Lord Christ, but their own appetites. By smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the minds of naive people. I think it's so important for us to just be mindful of that.
Yes.
And be watchful.
Yes.
And think. I mean, God really does infuse us with like that notion. Like we talked about that. Yes, we talked about that. Like a lot of these people gave testimony to say, we knew that this wasn't right deep down, but our belief system was deeper than our deep down, and it trumped it. The beliefs that they had been taught just quieted
that's what it
their
is.
natural inclination to go, wait, this doesn't feel right.
Absolutely. I 100% believe that God gives us a sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And especially when you're being violated,
yes,
and you don't have freedom, there's a natural sense of this can't be right.
Yeah.
But the fear drives the compliance.
Exactly. Really sad. All right. Well, let's talk for a little bit then about the dangers of cults.
Yeah, let's do that. I just want to read this this little blurb that I have here about cults. And it says, watch out because there are many cults. And I'm going to say this too. This is not what I'm reading. But when I was young, I thought cults were all like Satan worshipers and evil. I didn't know when I was really young that there's ones that are under the guise of Christianity. Okay. So anyway, while there are Satan worshiping cults, watch out for the cults that appear to be Christian. For example, it says Mormonism. We're not saying, I'm just reading this. Not all Mormons are this way, but it does say Mormonism. So like the branches, Jehovah's Witnesses, Oneness, Pentecostal, Christian Science, etc. Usually cults have a different Jesus, different way of salvation, which this FLDS definitely had a skewed thing of eternity.
Yeah, for sure.
They make a different Bible or interpret the Bible differently. They teach legalism and have a different teaching about life after death and more. Cults are dangerous. People are being brainwashed into believing man-made teachings. So that's something you and I were discussing just with amongst ourselves, that most cults have like one leader with no accountability. There's always brainwashing involved, manipulation, isolation, and, freedom, true freedoms, because we all know there's freedom in Christ, right? So when that's all taken away, you may be looking at a cult. And we are told that there are many false prophets in the last days. And right now there is many false prophets. So just watch out. They may seem okay, but remember, there is a way that seems right that leads to death. And there's a lot of scripture about cults and not following false prophets and things like that. And I want to read the end of this too. Sorry, I'm just scrolling down. Just something to remember. Oh my goodness. I can't find it now. Never mind.
That's okay.
But we all know, we know that there's only one way to heaven. There's only one way to salvation, and that is through Jesus. So remember that. If you're following anyone who says there's any other way, that's not truth.
One of the things that is a quandary is the definition of a cult. The definition of it. How do you know if a certain group is considered a cult? Yeah. And one of the things that I think is wrong about a lot of these groups, whether you call them a cult or you call them a church or you call them whatever you want to call them, an organization, a nonprofit, a charitable group, whatever. If they practice shunning of family, when one doesn't sign up for their beliefs, or when somebody wants to go off and do something different, if they shun that person, I believe that is 100% red flag. Stay away. Don't get involved in those groups. I think that we should shun the shunners. In terms of joining their groups, because people should be allowed to have their thoughts, or I just don't believe in shunning.
I don't either. Horrible. Although there are some Christian families that do believe in the gospel truth, that have cut off themselves from their families that have gone astray. I think I know you don't mean those people, but
oh no, I do mean them. I do mean them. I don't think it's right to shun people.
I don't either. I wouldn't say they're cults though, but
well, that's why I said call them what you want to call them. Call them a cult, call them a group, call them a family, call them whatever you want to call them. But to shun people, that's not what Jesus did.
No.
He didn't come here and shun people.
Right.
No.
Right.
You love people where they are.
Right.
And if their belief is different than your belief, then be confident enough in your own belief system that it's okay and you could still love that person.
Yeah.
But these people are filled with paranoia that if they let the members of their group run off and just, like talk to other people with some other thoughts, that they might be, gone astray.
Yeah. And I was telling you before we started recording, I actually knew of an Amish man. He was the man who built our Amish furniture. And he was shunned by his family because he and his wife wanted to adopt. I keep hitting the microphone. Wanted to adopt a child.
Well, that's wrong.
I know. And they did adopt this child who needed a family.
Well, they shouldn't have been shunned for that. That was dumb.
Right.
And whoever did that is dumb.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Not sorry.
Yep. I found this that I wanted to read. So I'm going to read
Go ahead.
So always remember this, listeners. Jesus is God in the flesh, and he is the only way into heaven. Never let anyone tell you something different. Your good works will not save you. The sinless Lamb of God paid the price in full and said it's finished, which it is. You can't add anything to the finished work of Christ. No baptism, giving, traditions, or other legalistic things will save you. Only Jesus saves you.
Yeah.
So remember that.
See, and these people thought that having 3 wives would save you.
Yeah.
No.
3 wives or more.
Right.
And the more you had, the higher
closer.
you were in your heavenly home or whatever.
All right. I'm ready for the call to action.
Yeah.
We do have a call to action, friends. And that is, if you're looking for a connection to God, if you're listening to us and you're like, I would like to have a connection with God, our encouragement to you is to look for a good church, a good Christian church, but make sure that wherever you look, there are 3 things that are true about that church. Number 1, there should be accountability somewhere in the church.
Right.
There shouldn't be just one person in charge of the whole thing.
Dictating
like Hitler. There should be accountability in the church. And it could be in the form of a board or a denomination or whatever, but accountability. Number 2, there should be transparency.
That's right.
No secrets.
That's right.
There should be transparency with the money and the decisions. And if you start to get the vibe that this is kind of going down in a weird way, like just trust us, run.
Put it on the shelf.
That's what they said in this documentary. Oh, okay. And then finally, it's our belief that a good church should welcome questioning.
Right.
They should welcome it.
It doesn't mean they'll always have answers, but it does mean that they will, like you said, welcome them and try to wrestle with some of the hard questions.
Right. Yeah. And if you can't find a community of faith that that answers those 3 things, then I would be very questionable about that.
Yeah.
I'd be like, maybe keep going. Keep
away.
looking. All right. Well, this was fun, Cathrine.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Serious. I was pretty riled up about this one.
So was I.
Yeah.
I didn't think I would be, but once we got into it, I'm like, this can't be real. It is.
Yeah.
Well, you've been listening to the Life Happens, Laugh Anyway podcast. I'm still comedian Tracy DeGraff.
I'm still Cathrine.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.